Alright, MrSotko here, and welcome to another Company Heroes 2 replay cast, and today is a 2 vs 2, and before I say this, mind you, I do not have a French accent, and the map is called Trois Pont, which means 3 bridges in French, so I'm sorry if I totally destroyed that. If you are French, I apologize in advance, but, you know, it is what it is. Now, over on the right side, let's check out our heroes of the game. And we have the Russian Torkel, and we have the blue Russian Red Beaver. Pretty funny. And on the left side, we have the Wehrmacht players, Shovah, and the Red Wehrmacht, Command and Conquer. And I love that name because I love Command and Conquer. I used to play Command and Conquer Red Alert on my PlayStation 1 when I was like 13 or 12. Loved that game. Played that for so many hours. Although it is much, much better on PC, which I found out when I was a little bit older. Now, moving out for the Russian player here. Looks like he's skipping this territory point. Might take it with the conscripts here. And this is the first time I've ever casted this map, by the way. So it's a first. And now these engineers taking this territory point here. So let's check out what the Germans are up to. Germans going directly for the fuel point. That is pretty typical of the Germans. Now the MG42 now moving out. So a quick MG42 for the Red Wehrmacht here, and also an MG for the Russian player as well. So getting them out pretty early there, and taking this fuel point, and we have an MG42 for the pink German player as well. So let's see what's going on up here. We have engineers taking the territory point, and this is a fairly large map. It's very convoluted, and all kinds of bridges and things like that that you could break down and give your opponent a hard time. HMG now set up in a pretty good spot here. These conscripts going to run right into it. I'm not sure if they see this or not. Indeed, the firing begins, and they're going to get suppressed right off the bat, basically. And that is not good for the yellow Russian player to get suppressed directly in the beginning of the game. MG42 now trying to fire at these conscripts over here, but they're in good cover, so it's going to take a couple seconds to suppress them. But, however, they do take the munitions point just in time there. We'll see what's going on. The Grenadiers and Engineers now moving forward here, and the MG42 has decided to stay back, and there's an MG for the Russian players now setting up. It's going to start suppressing these German troops right back, and here comes some Engineers, but they're going to get suppressed by this MG42 unless they go all the way around to flank. The blue Russian player now moving over to the left side here against the pink German player. Now going to take this fuel point from him. However, the Engineers are going to come around, try and stop him, but they're not going to be able to stop all that firepower. And these Engineers have gotten on the other side of the MG, took a few members out. And this Engineer actually got on the other side of this MG. So both players being very, very clever here and trying to get behind these MGs. However, there's some Grenadiers here that's going to stop these Engineers in a quick hurry. MG42 still set up in this building, covering that area there. Conscripts now inside of this building, and looks like the German player actually had to back off a little bit. The Engineers are in this building here until he can get some more firepower. Now we have a mortar here. Going to start bombing that building that those conscripts and Engineers are inside. These Engineers, they were trying to use URA to get around, but didn't quite get around in time. And now both sides are suppressing each other here. These Grenadiers against these conscripts, and these two MGs are just sort of suppressing each other. However, it looks like the Russians getting the better of this and had to retreat. The Germans had to retreat out of there as the Russians just got around all those MGs. Two conscripts and these Engineers now pushing the Germans back from this sector here. And the Germans do own this victory point. However, this victory point here is in neutral, so each side owning one victory point. So neither side really taking each other down just yet, although the Russian player got taken down just a little bit, but not a big deal at the beginning of the game. Now flamethrowers for these Engineers now moving out. However, they're losing men very quickly. Going to have to get out of there. Going to take some flame from these Engineers here, and I'm surprised he didn't lose them in that negative cover. Now the Russians taking this whole sector back here, taking the fuel point as well from the Germans, so they will have both fuel points, denying the Germans the fuel. Best thing you can do, really. And now we have mortar versus mortar, so it's basically a mirror match here. Both sides doing almost exactly the same thing. Conscripts battling out with these two Grenadiers here. These Grenadiers really aren't in very good cover. For some reason, these aren't in cover even though they're behind a wall. They must be just barely away from it. I'm not really sure how he's not. Mortars a little too far away from each other. They don't have vision, so they can't really be firing right now. These conscripts are going to stay here behind these sandbags. A pretty good idea. So no matter what, the German is going to have to come around here, and it's going to be very hard for him to get around there. Maybe have to come around or get some mortars and just start firing down on all these. Looks like some smoke is being dropped over here. And mortars just going off randomly. Looks like they don't really know where each other's at, so they're just trying to mortar whatever. And so far, nothing going on too much. Both sides sort of retreated away from each other. This red Wehrmacht now trying to come up along here, but it's going to be hard for him. But this machine gun only has one man, so he can get that machine gun if he wanted to. He can rifle grenade. He indeed rifle grenades that MG and takes out that MG. And looks like he rifle grenaded it previously, which made it down to 1, which I did not see. Grenadiers now taking back the left side, northern side rather, fuel point. And they really need that fuel point. The Germans just need fuel so badly. Everything of theirs costs just way more fuel than the other armies. Grenadiers now moving alongside here. However, there's so many sandbags here and so much cover for these conscripts and engineers to hide behind. However, sort of failing them right now as this MG42 is set up in a very good position, just getting all these troops here, starting to suppress these troops, all having to get down on the ground. Now these Grenadiers can have their field day with them. Going to have to retreat out of there very soon. Now the blue Russians now moving forward at the Wehrmacht over here. Engineers now moving forward against these Grenadiers. Getting a little tongue-tied here. Going to start unleashing that fire on them. Going to have to retreat out of there. So the Russians now forcing away the Germans from the center here. However, there's MGs battling at each other. And this MG is going to provide the Russians a little hard time. However, there's mortars hitting this building. And now it looks like this engineer is going to hop over this wall, start flaming up this building here. It's going to force that MG out of there or destroy it if he doesn't get out of there. Now the red Wehrmacht player now starting to take the right side down here. Going to take that back from the Russian player. This mortar squad here is also in trouble of this flamethrower here and just barely makes it out of there. The Wehrmacht owns the top victory star here, and the victory point for the Wehrmacht is going to be taken soon here at the bottom. So soon the Wehrmacht are going to turn this around. It looks like the Wehrmacht is slightly losing this game. However, they have more victory points. And currently on the bottom, looks like it's actually going back and forth. Rather, I take that back. It's sort of just going back and forth here. The Russians are dominating the middle here. However, the Germans are dominating the bottom part. And sort of just by the fact that nothing's up here, they're dominating the top part. Stormtroopers out for the Wehrmacht as well. Conscripts running away from the MG42 here. And need to get back before they get suppressed and do just that. Now Grenadiers going to start chasing. However, the conscripts are going to have very good cover behind all this concrete and all these tombstones provide very good cover. Engineers now taking this munitions point here. However, it looks like there's some conscripts coming along. They may spot each other there. And indeed start firing at each other. However, there's an MG42 set up here to suppress any troops that come along through here. And there's an MG42 here to suppress any troops coming through here. So it's going to be very hard for the Russian player. They need to start bringing maybe some mortars down here. Or at least use the barrage of the ZIS, which is a very expensive, unfortunately. And start forcing away some of these MG42 so he can start taking this back. However, these conscripts are behind these sandbags and taking back this fuel point here. And this MG42 stopped setting up for a second, like they got up, and I think that was a big mistake, as now these conscripts are going to get behind this machine gun here, and going to have to retreat out of there. He doesn't really have too much of an option here. Yep, retreats out of there. Stormtroopers for the red Wehrmacht as well. Get through those bundled grenades and use the sprint ability for those stormtroopers. And this also can be deployed from ambient buildings. I forgot about that for just a second there. So as long as you hold that territory, you can just bring them out of those ambient buildings. And stormtroopers and Panzer Grenadiers up here, holding the top still. However, the Russians still dominating the middle here. And I'm surprised the Germans held on to this, as he had to get rid of that MG there. And I'm surprised that he didn't just force all these troops in here once that MG got out of there. But must have started losing them troops. Now stormtroopers directly in front of these conscripts here, so battling out with each other. Could throw those bundle grenades at those conscripts. Don't see why not. Would take a little bit of its munitions, but could do some huge damage to those conscripts with those bundle grenades. Gonna force both of them forcing each other out of there. Now the pink Wehrmacht moving up with a Granatwehr for 34 mortar team. Stormtroopers also moving forward with the the 4 Sturmgewehr 44 assault rifle package, as you can choose one or the other on the stormtroopers. Ooh, a big, indeed, uses that barrage ability, as I said earlier, to hit these machine guns here, and it does cost you a lot. However, that definitely paid off. He destroyed that MG instantly there. These stormtroopers now moving forward here and battling out with this ZIS. May lose this ZIS. However, there's some conscripts. Way too much forces. Won't lose this ZIS. Take that back. as there's so much forces coming through here. And needs to get those stormtroopers out of there immediately as there's shock troops and 2 squads of conscripts moving forward on him. And maybe he doesn't see this. Needs to get out of there. Going to lose his stormtrooper. I doubt he'll get away from that. And it would be a miracle if he did. And he does get away. I'm very surprised. He was in negative cover and being fired at by at least 2 squads. The pink Wehrmacht sort of balling up against here. I don't think I agree with that, as a mortar could just easily focus on this area, and he's going to get one of these sooner or later. Sturmgewehr stormtroopers should move out and start getting those mortars. MG42 set up here. Going to start suppressing these troops that are coming in, and there's 2 grenadier squads to cover the flank here. Maybe pick up this Maxim heavy machine gun. That wouldn't be too bad. It looks like these conscripts may be trying to get... Nope, just trying to get into cover here against these grenadiers. And now these shock troops against this MG42, they throw a smoke grenade, and he has to move this back because they're able to get up too close now, and they could throw their regular grenade if they got a little too close. Now stormtroopers moving up, and he also got the Sturmgewehr 44 assault rifle. So huge damage on them stormtroopers. Now a grenade, and it didn't do too much, so sort of lucked out on that grenade there. Could have lost a little bit more. Pack 40 now set up just in case any armor comes through here, but I don't think either side has any armor at the moment. Doesn't look that way. No, neither side has any armor at the moment. But better safe than sorry. Might as well get it out before there's armor. That way you don't have to run away from the armor. 2 grenadiers now moving forward here. There is a ZIS-76 here, and it is very vulnerable. It is in negative cover, so it is exceptionally vulnerable right now, and he's losing very, very quickly here. May lose the whole squad there. Loses the whole squad of that. Now going to have to rearm that, which costs quite a bit to do that. Will take away his conscripts. Now this grenadier may lose. This grenadier was in negative cover for a second there, but doesn't lose it. He lucks out there. Stormtroopers battling out with their Sturmgewehrs at such close range. Takes out those conscripts in a very quick hurry here. Now battling out up here. There's way too much German firepower for these engineers and conscripts here. However, this engineer has a flamethrower. Drops that flamethrower. Looks like he's going to pick that up. He should pick that up. I don't see why he wouldn't pick that up. Or at least a conscript should pick it up. There is a flamethrower sitting on the ground there. Is it a free flamethrower? Why not? And to have flamethrowers on grenadiers or another odd unit that cannot normally pick up flamethrowers is a very good idea. Indeed, picks up that flamethrower. 2 machine guns in the center of town here. One of them moving out, trying to get a little bit better position here. ZIS set up here. However, there's troops coming right behind this ZIS. Needs to move it forward. Can't move it backward, because if he moves it backwards, it's going to move it right into these troops here. Here's the ZIS now set up. Could have used, trying to use a barrage ability, but way too late. Well, actually gets one of them. Gets a really good one on that one. However, rifle grenade comes in, takes out one of those troops. Not enough, though. And trying to get these troops out of here now, but now he's in big trouble. He only has 1 troop and loses those grenadiers. May lose his stormtroopers here as they're in negative cover because they were running through the road. Panther grenadiers now about to take negative cover here, and maybe indeed makes it out of there. So it's sort of a loss for the German player there. Looked like he had a very good situation going on there, but really just didn't pay off for him, which is very surprising. Now a T-70 out on the field, moving towards this German player down here on the right side. However, the Wehrmacht player has a command bunker here, so he can just reinforce from here. He has 2 stormtroopers. Needs to get the Panzerschreck anti-tank upgrade on the stormtroopers here, which would be a very good idea because this T-70 is coming, but he doesn't know that he has a T-70 out just yet. So we'll see how that plays out. T-70 now moving in. Now he knows that T-70 is there. Should start getting that Panzerschreck upgrade pretty soon here. I would like to see him do that. Now going to chase down those Grenadiers, gets out with their lives. T-70 now going around back, maybe start trying to get this bunker here. All of his forces just retreating out of there. I don't really agree with that. Could be using at least a Panzerfaust on that T-70 there. Now over on the left side, shock troops taking this victory point here up top. Going to leave 2 victory points for the Russian player, so going to start turning around for them. As it's the first time the Wehrmacht player will start losing points. As it's currently 500 to 350, so the Wehrmacht in a very commanding position right now. However, going to start losing points now that the Russians have 2 victory points. Now, Panzer IV set up here, was chasing down that T-70, as the T-70 has no chance against that Panzer IV. Shock troops now trying to take this fuel point here, but there's a little bit of troops here. Going to provide some resistance. Throws a grenade inside this building. See what that does. Gets those troops out just in time, though. Pioneer squad now going to use the flamethrower against these shock troops here. Shock troops going to take some pretty big damage. but actually doing some pretty good damage to the engineers themselves. Engineers trying to seek cover here. Gonna have to start retreating very soon. Yep, indeed, starts retreating, as he just can't handle that damage. And now the Pack 40 is in big trouble over here. And there's just a mortar and a Pack 40 here, so both of them extremely weak. And loses that Pack 40 crew. He's gonna have to recrew that now. Incendiary barrage now coming down on these troops here. Needs to get those out of there, retreats that out of there, and just moves these forward without retreating them. Now back here, conscripts over here going across this bridge now, decides to take a different route, decides to not go down through this route anymore, as it wasn't really providing him too much luck. So now decides to try to take a different route here, see how this works out for him. Panzer IV all the way up on this cliff wall here, and these conscripts firing at it, but however, the turret is turning towards that house now. Shock troops battling out with these grenadiers, and throws another grenade at those grenadiers, loses 3 grenadiers with that 1 grenade there, needs to retreat that out of there. Oh, retreats, gets it out of there, but loses that grenadier in the process, so big losses for the Wehrmacht there. Losing any troops is just not a very good thing. Panzer IV out for the red Wehrmacht, Panzer IV out for the pink Wehrmacht as well, so much more armor out for the Wehrmacht so far, so the Russians are going to have to watch out for that. However, the Russians do have quite a bit of ZIS-76s on the map. Here's one, and also one here set up in a pretty good position for this Panzer IV. It looks like the Panzer IV did take a little bit of damage. Not sure if it was an anti-tank grenade from the conscripts or if it was from the ZIS itself. Now T-70 moving forward, going to do some damage to these Panzer Grenadiers. However, I'd like to see these Panzer Grenadiers use the Panzer Shrek on that. Could take out the engine of that at the very least, but takes munitions to do that.
Standing by.
Now moving forward, taking the top victory point here back from the Russians to turn the score back around again. And tons of anti-tank now for the Russian player in the center here. 2 ZIS, more than enough to kill any tank, really, if played correctly. Panzer IV now going to get a hit on this T-70 here. Looks like that Z-76 was decrewed, and I'm not sure how. I did miss that. Maybe he used a rifle grenade on that. I'm going to chase down this T-70 here, and it looks like these conscripts may try and take this ZIS. Indeed, going to try and take that ZIS, and if they get in there, they may be able to get a hit on this Panzer IV. However, it may be their downfall as well, because this Panzer IV can just go around it. And now the Panzer IV is going to go around this way to prevent attacks.
Panzer Grenadiers.
2 shock troops, mortars, machine guns, and ZIS all in the center here. So a big cluster in the center here. I'd like to see a Panzerwerfer just firing on this cluster. That would be pretty nice. Now going to repair up this Panzer IV. A second Panzer IV out for the red Wehrmacht. Looks like also a second Panzer IV for the pink Wehrmacht, so both of them just getting 2 Panzer IVs out. So it's going to be a huge amount of armor compared to the Russians right now. So the Russians need to definitely take care of that. 2 ZIS fire at once on this Panzer IV. Did pretty good damage, almost half health there. So not too bad. Huge ball of troops here, all repairing and getting healed. And needs to get those out of there as soon as possible and get back to taking territories, as the Russians are starting to take over. However, the Germans are having a hard time taking the center here, as it's just completely filled with Russian troops here. Machine guns all over the place. So suppression going to happen if you go in there with troops. And if you go in with armor, there's 2 ZIS to do some pretty good damage to your armor as well. So I would like to see a Panzerwerfer there.
Squad, ready to move.
Now these 2 stormtroopers here are moving towards the center, are going to take this undefended center victory point here from the Russian player. And now these 2 Panzer IVs are all repaired up. Oh, just a little sliver on that Panzer IV there. Incendiary barrage coming down on those troops, but just 1 troop there, so I say a waste of a troop there, or incendiary barrage. Sprinting out of there to prevent damage from that ZIS. He didn't want to get barraged there and lose a big group of troops. Sort of a Mexican standoff going on right now. Nothing really happening. Now bringing up this huge ball of Russian troops here, trying to take some of this territory back. However, these 2 Panzer IVs are going to give him a very hard time. Needs to move up his ZIS. Has a Su-76 out on the field too. Needs to bring those up at the same time to do some good damage to these Panzer IVs. However, I don't think it's going to be enough. Even a Su-76 and the 76. Here come these stormtroopers back from the center here. They failed at taking the center, but that's okay. As long as you hold 2, that's fine. And here comes the ZIS, or Su-76. Needs to start getting out of there, as these 2 Panzer IVs are going directly for that Su-76. Needs to start getting out of there immediately, as he just doesn't have any backup. He needs to bring this ZIS up. Has another ZIS too. but just not bringing them up. Now decides to just now bring that up, but loses the Su-76 before he gets those ZIS up there. So just not very good play for the Russian player right there. But we'll see how it plays out later. Mistakes are always made. Not too big of a deal there, but as the Su-76 doesn't really cost too much. Now bringing two ZIS 76s over here. Not sure if I agree with that because he's going to leave this side open. But we'll see if it turns out good for the Russian player. Maybe he can sneak up on these Panzers here. And he may do just that. However, I don't know if it takes a hit in the rear armor from his ZIS. He needs to set up these ZIS immediately here. Could have got that, but didn't set them up. Was just moving them instead of setting them up. Now two Panzer IVs, indeed, exactly what happened there. He knew that those ZIS were moved away from the center here. Now just brought in these Panzer IVs here, causing some big damage, separating all these troops. And just causing general chaos in the center here, as he's holding the top, and the Russians now starting to hold the bottom here, as they took it back from all these troops that moved in. Now bringing back these ZIS to the back of the center here. Learned his lesson on that one. Now turning around the ZIS 76. Needs to just go back to the other side here. Hit in the rear armor of that Panzer IV, was facing the wrong way. Now rear facing this 76 again. Needs to move forward. And loses that ZIS crew. So that was a big mistake from the blue Russian player. Shock troops trying to burn down this bunker here, but I'm not sure if they're going to be able to do that or not. Panzer IV now here in big trouble here, as there's two ZIS. One fires, but two did not. The second one did not get the fire. Ooh, a grenade going off on this. Looked like a bundle grenade from the Panzer Grenadier there. Did huge damage on those ZIS. A big mistake. I just can't imagine why he brought those ZIS over. Now he's in big trouble here. He lost all of his ZIS, although he did lose a Panzer IV, but I'd say the Russians lost out much more there. And Flame, as usual, lagging out the computer a little bit, even though my computer is more than enough to handle the game. Slightly unoptimized fire. Stormtroopers against a whole slew of Russian troops here, and they're trying to get that ZIS down. Get the ZIS down. Very good job from those Stormtroopers. Now going to just get out of there. They did their job. Now they can go home and go on leave. Have a break. Now barraging here. However, the barrage is definitely missing troops here. Wasn't the best barrage. However, it's going to make sure those troops don't go in that area at the very least. Shock troops now taking back the munitions point here. Russians still have this victory point here. Just really uncontested by both sides, really. The Germans tried to take it once with those two stormtroopers, but then just decided to give up after that. And he sprinted away from it, even though there wasn't really anything that was going to damage him. There was a ZIS there that could have barraged on him, but that's sort of very easy to dodge, especially if you have sprint. So now the Russians starting to take the right side, starting to dominate all this right bottom side here, and the center. So turning the game around slightly for the Russian players here. Even though they lost a huge amount in the center here, there's 3 ZIS here decrewed, which is going to take a long time to recrew those, as you're going to have to bring conscripts forward or engineers or anything, and then have to go back and reinforce the group that you use to crew the ZIS with. So takes recrews that with a group of conscripts. So 3 for each of those. Shock troops now taking this fuel point as well, so both fuel points going to be belonging to the Russian players, so they're going to deny fuel from the Germans again. However, the Germans already have 2 Panzer IVs out. Looks like actually even more now for the red Wehrmacht player. He has a 3rd Panzer IV and an Ostwind moving out. And I'm surprised that the pink doesn't have an Ostwind yet either. He only has 1 Panzer IV, and he does have 3 Panzer IV suppression intel bulletins for his Ostwinds, but I'm not sure if those stack or not. They might. It's sort of, I'm not really sure on that one. If they do, just great, but he doesn't have any Ostwinds out to use them anyway, so really, it's a moot point at the moment. Shock troops going to be moving forward here, but not going to be able to handle all this German firepower. Looks like there's an incendiary barrage coming down. Going to have to back that mortar out of there. It's going to burn alive there. And the red Wehrmacht player looking like he's going to take this right side back, but needs to set it up properly, as there's 2 ZIS 76s here that are going to do some big damage to his vehicles if he doesn't do this correctly. I'd like to see another Sturmgewehr upgrade on these Stormtroopers, as they could just run right at these ZIS and do big damage to them, take out those troops, decrew those ZIS in a heartbeat. And now barraging here, but needs to just move forward. He needs to just move right through it here. Looks like he's going to bring this back and maybe try and barrage these troops that are harassing this ZIS. And nope, does not get to use the barrage as he retreats before he's able to use it. 3 Panzers here just sitting around, not really using those at the moment. And the Russians still just hoarding themselves in the center here. And looks like he brought those field guns all the way back to base and recrewed them with 6 members. So nothing going on here, just a big stalemate up top as the Russians really can't move any forward, and the German is having a hard time moving forward as well into the center as there's just so much stuff. 3 ZIS now. Here comes a barrage now. Let's see where that landed. Not sure where that landed, actually. Artillery zeroes in on isolated units here. So he's closing the pocket now on all these active territories. And bombing the hell out of all these territories here.
We have lost a machine gun crew.
Cutting off all these territories here. So a whole bunch of chaos going on.
More of our troops have been lost.
Now needs to move these forward. I'd suspect it would be a good time to move these forward as he totally decimated the entire army, basically, of the yellow player. Look, he has absolutely nothing left. He used to have 3. Now, just nothing left. Both of them looks like they used to close the pocket at the same time. And that is a pretty good move. Actually, I don't think I've ever used that doctrine before. So, bombards all of the sighted enemy front lines. So he had sight on all of these front lines here. And they just got all bombed, and he lost virtually everything. The Russians now have almost nothing. He lost all the ZIS, all of his troops, now retraining them all. And for the blue Russian player, we'll see his forces, and what he has left is just this shock troop. Just that. That's all he has. That's all he has left, and so that was an amazing move. That was, I'm not sure about the shadiness of that. That took out everything that the Russians owned because they did not have them in supply. So I think if you have a supply, munitions, or a field depot, that will not happen at those territories.
Ready. Squad, ready to move.
And Red Beaver over there is really, really curious as to what that was. And actually, I was curious as to what that was for the second there. I don't think I've ever used the encirclement doctrine.
Shoots in here.
And typically, I've never really seen it used in the games that I've played either. So that was an incredible final move there. That was unbelievable. Cost 200 munitions, though. So it is very, very costly to use that. However, that was extremely effective. The blue has absolutely nothing. He has just this IS-2 and shock troops. That's all he has. Nothing. And the yellow player is left with just a few troops as well. So now the Germans in a completely unbelievably commanding position as they can just take over all these points now. And the Russians really can't do anything about it. So I'm assuming a GG is going to be coming in here pretty soon, unless they can make a huge move against the Russians or the Germans. And so now moving forward, going to take this, at least take this territory back at first, and jumping over the wall there. Now the Panzer IVs all set up in a defensive position here, just ready for any kind of Russians to move forward here. And here comes the Su-76, and doesn't move any further there as you can't really see. He doesn't really have vision. Panzer IV now moving forward. He takes a hit from that IS-2 though, and takes some pretty big damage from that. The IS-2 is going to fire again and do some pretty big damage. Takes it just about half health there. Now T-34-76 also out in the field. So Su-76 and T-34 out for the yellow Russian player. And did some good damage to that Panzer IV. Needs to bring up both Panzer IVs there, and could be possibly take this IS-2 here. And Panzer Grenadiers, 2 Panzer Shreks at once hit that IS-2 there. And we'll see what happens here. Looks like he may lose this IS-2. And it looks like Torkel has actually left the game. The yellow Russian player has actually left the game, so now it is an AI. And the blue Russian now battling out. The blue Russian has a KV-8 and an IS-2 here. Going to be moving forward with them. And the KV-8 not going to be doing too much damage, especially with the flamethrower currently equipped. And And 3 Panzer IV here is now moving up against this T-34. That T-34 is an AI. So he's going to lose this. This AI is going to lose that in a quick hurry. Now pushing forward with his IS-2 and his KV-8. Which I feel he should bring the KV-8 and use the alternative weapon on that KV-8 to at least start doing some damage to this Ottoman and these Panzer IVs to assist this IS-2 here. However, he's just using it to force away these troops for now. The flamethrower is very long range, does very good damage. Now 2-star Panzer II out on the field. And the AI pushing up with shock troops here and getting battled out with the stormtroopers here, but instead he brought these stormtroopers right outside this building here. Maybe he didn't actually, because he has the Stormgewehr upgrade. Osman fighting it for its life here with this tiny flak cannon and battling out with this IS-2. Gonna lose this Osman. I don't think he's gonna be able to save this. And the Osman is doing its best to fire at this IS-2 here. He's covering his ears there. It explodes. KV-8 now moving forward at the pink Wehrmacht here. So the blue Russian player is actually pushing forward here. He totally pushed that Wehrmacht player completely back to his base. Destroyed everything he had. Doesn't have anything left to use. And now 3 Panzer IVs are against this IS-2 here. And the shots are just sort of planking off the frontal armor of that IS-2, but couldn't last forever there. And now the KV-8 is the only thing left for the blue player here. Literally the only unit left for Red Beaver here. And finally loses that. So I'm assuming the GG is going to be coming very soon here. Now the Osman battling out with these conscripts here. Osman just to be able to shred these conscripts up. It's just the AI, so he has no idea what he's doing here. And stormtroopers also battling out with these conscripts. It's going to take him down very quickly here. I'm expecting to see it. Oh, actually throws an anti-tank grenade at that Panzer there. And damages his engine. Now all the yellow troops moving out. And I'm not sure if blue is even making anything. Looks like he actually has the stormtroopers out, but I'm not sure what he's thinking he's going to be able to do. I highly doubt he's going to be able to turn this game around. It would be one of the most amazing game turnarounds I've ever seen if he does, but I just doubt that's going to happen. Now 4 Panzer IVs out for the red Wehrmacht, so a huge armored force for the Wehrmacht, and the pink Wehrmacht really doesn't have too much out on the field. The AI now starting to take out some of the victory points here. So the AI just going right for the victory points. Shock troops also going for the victory points here. Going to stall the game just a little bit, but that's the best it's going to do. And here comes a couple of Panzer IVs here. Not sure where the other 2 Panzer IVs are. Oh, looks like they're getting repaired. Yep, getting repaired up. So only bringing out the fresh Panzer IVs. Now the Panzer IV has spotted these shock troops, and these shock troops have no chance against the Panzer IV, so they're just going to have to stand here and try and take this victory point if they possibly can, but he decided to walk them away, which I sort of disagree with. Should just stand there, take the victory point at the very least, even if you lose some of those shock troops. Pink Wehrmacht now forcing away these shock troops here. However, there's some incendiary barrage coming down from the blue Russian player. It looks like some of this incendiary may land on these shock troops here. Nope, just barely misses them. The AI also taking some of the center back here. So the Wehrmacht is actually in a stalemate here, as they only have 1 flag and need to be taking this middle victory point here, but not really doing that. Isn't really aware that the center victory point even exists, as I haven't seen the Germans at the center victory point virtually all game, except for those couple stormtroopers.
What do you want, comrade?
So that was the best close the pocket I've ever seen. And using the closing the pocket again, looks like starting to bomb out some of these units back here.
Incendiary artillery barrage ready to fire.
An AI being very pesky, taking all of these victory points here. And random territory points as well. Now blue has 2 shock troops and also bringing out a ZIS along with the AI's ZIS as well. So now bringing out some ZIS, some anti-tank, and some anti-troops. Now finally the Wehrmacht taking the center victory point here. Finally took that. But now has to battle these shock troops so they don't retake that. But has to retreat those. There's way too much firepower on those shock troops. Loses those shock troops. to the Ostwind and the Panzer IV there. And the top side belonging to the Russian team here. And the bottom side belonging to the Wehrmacht. However, finally the Wehrmacht takes that center, which I think they could have taken many, many times throughout the game, as it was virtually undefended. Now pushing the Russian player out of the center here. And the CIS is set up in the wrong place. Can't get a hit on this Flak Panzer facing that way. Decides to place it the other way now, but the Flak Panzer is just way too quick and just sort of out-juke this CIS-76 until it's completely destroyed, as this Flak is doing huge damage to it. One shock troop remaining. I don't think he even really cares at this point, as they only have 29 points left and a very, very little hope, as it's just one player and an AI against these two players.
The enemy has killed another infantry squad. We need orders. We are close to victory. Press on. The enemy has 25 points remaining. Stuka bombers stand
Now
ready
retaking
to
the
break
top
their
victory point as
supply
well.
lines. Squad.
Now using these stormtroopers taken out of this ambient building here, had sight on that and is able to just bring out some troops right from it.
We are receiving new orders. Sector artillery is ready for use, Commander.
Panzer V now out on the field for the Pink Wehrmacht.
The enemy can taste defeat. They only have 10 points remaining.
And only 8 points remaining for the rest of the game here. And apparently Red Beaver does not want to surrender at all. He's going to wait till the last second to surrender. And looks like a GG. And the Russian players lose the game, leaving the Wehrmacht as the winner. And I believe the deciding factor of this game was these closed pockets. I think they actually coordinated it and used them at the same time, because at the same time both of them were down when that was first used. And just across the entire map, the entirety of the map was just being pummeled by artillery and artillery and mortars. And it destroyed all of the troops for both sides, virtually all the troops for both sides, and that was just the deciding factor. It was GG there. So that's the way that goes. And I hope you guys enjoyed this replay, and I will see you guys next time.